Relationship Goals 2020. Oh, welcome to a new segment done by J-Rocc called J-Rocc Says. And we're going to be talking about how to become a more effective communicator. You ever had a conversation with somebody and the conversation just took a left turn? Or maybe somebody took something out of context and you really didn't mean it the way they took it? Or maybe you went to try to resolve a conflict or an issue you had with somebody and it just got worse. But you never intended for that to happen? Never happened to you? Well then come on back and let's find out how to fix this.
If you smile,
What J-Rocc
is cooking.
Finally, J-Rocc has come back to you too. What is happening in it with the millions and millions of J-Rocc's fans? You're here with J-Rocc for a new segment called J-Rocc Says. And in this particular segment, we're talking about relationship goals. Got a new year. Pretty sure many of you made some New Year's resolutions. And I'm quite certain many of you, your New Year's resolutions were centered around relationships. Whether it's with your spouse, your mate, your significant other, family, friends, co-workers, doesn't matter. You have a resolution to improve those relationships. J-Rocc wants to help and impart some of the wisdom that he has in this area onto you. Now, speaking for someone that's been married for almost 10 years, and also someone who has studied human behavior and the psychology and communication styles for damn near a decade, I want to impart many of that wisdom to you and what I've used and how it's helped me. Now, if you're like me, if you hear the word communication, many of you probably assume that when you hear the word communication, you hear verbal communication. But in fact, almost 80% of all communication is nonverbal. So in other words, we're not saying a word, but we're saying a whole lot. You guys know the old slogan, the old saying, actions speak louder than words. Yeah, that's nonverbal communication. Someone says one thing and does another, you're most likely going to go with what they did versus what they said, right? Because actions speak louder than words. So in many instances, many of the times we are giving off nonverbal cues to the people around us, and they are interpreting those cues, and we're not even trying to. Maybe from the way we dress, from the way we speak, our tone of voice, our eye contact, our hand placement, how we sit, how we stand, how we walk, where we hold our head. Do we walk with our head up? Do we walk with our head down? Do we make eye contact with people, or are we doing other things when they're talking to us? There are a lot of different nonverbal cues that send these signals out to people that can say, I care, I'm interested, I'm not interested, what you're saying doesn't matter to me. And not all people interpret them the same way, right? See, many of us fall into one or two categories, right? We're either people-oriented or we're task-oriented. Now, what's the difference? Well, a people person is someone who loves to be around people, right? And they communicate in a way that's really people-centric, right? They're very bright, outgoing, more extroverted. You know, they like being engaging with people. They like hanging out with people. They like being around people. You know, they're a talker. They like to engage in a lot of small talk. You know, they tend to make eye contact. They may even be a little touchy-feely, right? Or there are people who are more task-oriented, more work-oriented, and they're the opposite. You know, they tend to be a little more introverted, if you will. They don't tend to engage in a lot of small talk. The only time they speak is really when they're trying to accomplish something or get a task done. They're not going to go out of their way to strike up random conversations, not even with people that they know. They tend to not to be that good with keeping in touch with family and friends who live far and off somewhere. And so they're different. Now, it's not that they hate people. There are some times where task-oriented people like being around people maybe just not talking to them, right? More so in an introverted kind of way. Two introverts can be in the same room at the same time doing completely different things and be just fine with it. Not having a problem at all, a complaint in the world. They love that sort of thing, right? And so, yeah, task-oriented people can be that way, all right? Now, in addition to that, there are some other categories, and I'll hit on them lightly, all right? There are people who can be more, should I say, they fall into the category of, can't think of the word, or fast-paced, sorry. They tend to be fast-paced movers, like the morning people. Get up early in the morning, they're going out, they're action, they got to get stuff done, right? Whereas you have people that are pretty much slow and steady, take their time, you know, they're methodical. You know, they're not getting up at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. They're the late risers. They're not what you consider morning people, right? So if you have a morning person married to someone who's not a morning person, you can imagine how that would look. The morning person is up, crack of dawn, ready to get the day started, whereas the late riser, they may get up 10, 11 o'clock, maybe even later than that. But these are just some things that I'm throwing out there to you as far as from a nonverbal perspective that can say a whole lot without saying anything at all, right? Now, as far as communication tips, the first thing you always want to try to figure out is what type of communicator are you, right? Do you like being around people, or do you prefer hanging out by yourself? Do you like get up early in the morning to get the day started and getting things done? Or are you just, you get up, you know, when you're done sleeping, if you will? Are you someone that loves being around people, and do you communicate in a very positive, upbeat, a lot of energy, tend to talk to people? Or are you pretty much methodical, laid back, reserved? And there's 4 different styles. There's people that are direct, bottom line communicators, like to get to the point. There are people that are like to speak, you know, they like to inspire people when they speak. Those tend to be the people-oriented people, like to speak with a lot of energy. There are subtle and soft-spoken people that are laid back, don't like to, you know, yell or that sort of thing. They like to be kind of gentle with their speech. And then there's the analytical, you know, very specific, precise, like to communicate with a lot of detail and information. All right, and I'll give you an example of how this works, how real life situation. When I was teaching this in a church, there was a lady in the audience that was telling me about how her and her husband, if they have a fight, an argument, or disagreement, they just don't talk about it, right? And from what I remember, it was basically because she said that it was difficult for them to have this kind of conversation, to talk about things. Excuse me. So first thing that jumped out at me was, all right, she is more outgoing, more engaging with people, and she also tends to like to talk about her feelings and how she feels. Her husband didn't like to do that. He was more reserved, laid back, kept his feelings to himself, didn't like to express himself emotionally in that manner, the way she did. And so it made each other uncomfortable. All right, so I guess what they resolved to do is we're just not going to talk about it. Right, which is never a good thing, because whether you like to talk about it now or talk about it later, it needs to be discussed. Right? Now, the question is, how are you going to discuss it? And this goes back to what I said earlier. If you're trying to approach someone and resolve something and it ends up getting worse, a lot of times what ends up happening is that you're probably approaching them in a way that's comfortable for you, but not in a way that's comfortable for them. Right? And seeing as how there's only 4 different styles of communication, then it means that if you're communicating in the way that's comfortable for us, we're only 25% effective. So that means that there's a 75% chance that we're gonna, have some conflict or have a fight, an argument that's about to ensue. Things about to be taken out of conflict. That's a 75% chance versus a 25% chance. Now, I'm not a betting man, but if I was, I'd go with the odds. All right? And it's just simple as adapting your style. You're not changing who you are. You're modifying your approach because you're trying to get something accomplished. Now, what I told her is the same thing. All right? Instead of automatically assuming that there's something wrong with him, might want to ask yourself, how am I approaching him? Am I approaching him in a way that's comfortable for me or is comfortable for him? Right? Now, I know for some people it's hard to modify that. But try to make an effort to do that. Otherwise, it's just going to get worse and worse and probably end in divorce or breakup or family's not talking or you're not getting the job. So, what I would encourage everybody to think about until the next time, what kind of communicator are you? Do you like to get to the point? Do you like to talk with a lot of detail? Or are you someone who's people-oriented? Right? Do you tend to talk with energy and passion? Are you soft-spoken? Do you tend to be indirect when you communicate? That could be another thing. A direct communicator trying to communicate with an indirect communicator can lead to a lot of people feeling uncomfortable and feeling threatened when that's not what we're trying to do. All right? But this has been the first session of J-Rocc Says Communication Styles. Part 1. Stay tuned for part 2. Post your comments down below. Let me know what you thought of this. Would you like a part 2? Would this benefit you at all? Would you like to know more about communication styles? Are you having issues communicating with somebody? Whatever the case may be, post your comments and let me know. All right? Also, hit that bell so that you can be notified that it is time to be electrified. If you got a question or something about this, post it in the comment section, or you can go to my Facebook fan page. The link to it is down below in the comment section. Thank you for joining J-Rocc. Until next time. If you smile, what J-Rocc